Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Dynasty Pod. This week, since we missed a couple weeks, what we're going to change up the format a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and go through some of our user teams and kind of recap the last 2 weeks as well as go into a preview of what's to come. Right now, we're in week 6. We're still waiting on a couple results, but the league will advance here in about 6 hours. But I wanted to kind of update, where everyone's at as far as kind of standings and stuff. We have a couple of teams already that are pretty much eliminated from the playoffs, which is kind of insane, 6 weeks into the season. But these group of 6 teams have all been struggling. But kicking off with Arizona State. This team, as we previewed, this team is a very solid offensive roster. Last 2 weeks they went and beat Oklahoma at home, 69-37. A lot of offense, 764 yards of total offense. This Arizona State team is firing on all cylinders right now after losing the first 2 games. They as well beat a very talented South Carolina team. And this was done by scoring 34 points in the fourth quarter. Again, 751 yards of offense. Very, very solid. But this is the week, next week, week 7, once we advance. They play at number 2 Texas. It's going to be a very tough game. Texas is undefeated right now. They're very hot. Right now, they haven't played their game against Florida, so potentially another loss or a loss coming for them. But this will be a very interesting game to watch. Arizona State versus Texas. Next up on our list, we have Charlotte. Charlotte lost to Navy. They went and beat Ohio 31-28. This was a thrilling user game for this group of 6 American Conference. Ohio surged back. They were down 31-14, and they scored 14 unanswered in the fourth. And then they apparently were on the 5-yard line with about 5 seconds to go and ran out of time. So Charlotte, 194 yards on the ground. Great day for the boys on the ground. Uh, Ohio, not as much on the ground, but great through the air. And a great comeback. This Ohio team is off to a slow start, but this was a inspirational performance from them. That Navy game, Charlotte's going to want back. They had the opportunity to go 1-4. They haven't played USF yet for this current week, and they're going to need to stack this win up because they have Memphis and then Liberty. Memphis, who's ranked 20th, they're currently undefeated. So that USF is a beatable opponent for Charlotte. They're going to want to play that game. Next up on our list, we got East Carolina. This team is struggling. Following 3 straight user games. They had 2 back-to-back byes, and then they went on to play USF and North Texas at home, and they dropped both of those games. 27-11 to USF, 30-24, real close against North Texas, and that game actually went into looks like double overtime. So another heartbreaking loss for ECU. They're looking to get on the win column, and it's another possible opponent that they can win against, which is Tulane. But Tulane's 5-0. They're looking solid so far. So hopefully that win for ECU comes soon, because then they got some user games in the American Conference to end the season. So ECU is going to want to make sure that they get a win so they don't get fired. But yeah, next up we got Georgia. They had a bye. I don't remember if we recapped week 4 or not, but they beat LSU 28-21. A solid performance from them. They beat Kentucky. They had a lot of yards on the ground, 200 yards rushed. I think this game ended up getting desynced. But a solid performance from Georgia. They do what they need to do at home. And next week they are taking on Vanderbilt, which 1-4 Vanderbilt. This is a user game for them. They get another game at home, and then they face Arkansas, who's also off to a solid start. So some strings of user games. We got 3 straight user games now after the one against Kentucky, and then they got it's a tough schedule. It's a tough schedule, but good job taking care of business at home against Kentucky. They look to do the same thing against this very very struggling Vanderbilt team. That's Georgia for you, and then next up on our list we got just scrolling through the teams here. Kansas. Kansas is off in Europe. They're on their European tour. Currently, they are set to face Rutgers. I don't think that game is going to get done. And unfortunately, after the Europe trip is over, they go right to Happy Valley and play Penn State on the road. So not a lot of forgiveness here for Kansas. I mean, they're a solid 2-1 right now. They've had the virtues of buys, kind of making sure that they don't fall too far off the wagon. But hopefully, this fair sim against Rutgers is going to be a win. And then from there, it's probably the most hellish schedule to end the season. They have Penn State on the road. They go at Illinois, and then they face four straight user games: Ohio State, Michigan, Nebraska, Wisconsin. So no forgiveness there for the Kansas Jayhawks. Next up, we have the Kentucky Wildcats. After what was a great showing for the first four games, defeating Ohio and then SEC opponent Arizona State, and also beating at South Carolina, they fall to Georgia here. It was a tough performance for Kentucky going into Sanford Stadium, and they just couldn't get it done. But this Kentucky team is already off, exceeding expectations. But unfortunately, the schedule is not forgiving for them either. They go on the road at Oklahoma, and then they face a very solid Texas team. So it should be interesting next couple of weeks for Kentucky as they look to go in deeper into SEC play. Next up, we have the Liberty Flames. This squad, after dropping their first two user games, is on a nice little win streak here. They beat UTSA in week 5, 28-25, and they take Army to overtime 28-22 in what is two solid games to kick off their American schedule. Once again, another tough road for it seems like four straight user games now. So we got at Ohio, taking on Charlotte at home, taking on ECU at home, and traveling to Arizona State. So this Liberty squad's in for a couple of tough weeks before they close out their season against some CPUs, but good start to their American Conference schedule. If they can continue, they're on a strong pace to win the American already. They're the standout on the American Conference so far. So we'll see what happens there. Next up on the list, we got the Michigan Wolverines. This is a tough road for Michigan. They fall to UCLA in a CPU game. They lose to Nebraska at home, and then they also in on a bye, tough loss against Wisconsin. They put up more yards of offense, but it seems like Wisconsin in the second, third quarter really separated themselves, and Michigan can't stop turning the ball over. One interception for Bryce Underwood. Just not a great performance. The expectations were national champions for this Michigan team, and they're going to end up nowhere close. But now they go back-to-back buys, and then they have a little bit of a lighter schedule. They still got to play Penn State later on, Ohio State later on, but some easier games after the bye week. But not a great of a start for this Michigan team as you would have thought. So very disappointing for them. Next up, we got Nebraska, who has been looking solid recently. They beat Michigan 33-13 at Michigan. This game was a lot uglier before it got a quit. And then they went on a bye, and then they took care of business on the road at Illinois. They won 42-6. This Illinois squad could not move the ball against this Nebraska defense. The Nebraska offense looks solid. Now Nebraska has two more straight CPU games that they should take care of business before heading to a bye week. And then they have a very, very, very tough schedule to end the road these last 5 games of the season. But should rack up some wins, should climb up the rankings for Nebraska. They're in a good spot. They just have to see what happens at the end of the year. Next up, we got Ohio State. They have been taking care of business since that loss to Texas to the first game of the season. They beat Washington, beat Vanderbilt, beat Maryland, and now they look to take Illinois at home next week. This Illinois squad, after suffering a bad loss, this should be a favorable for Ohio State, and they're putting up points. They're doing their job. This receiving core is doing great. After that Illinois game, they take on 3 straight users. Actually four straight, but one is separated by a bye week. So this Big Ten schedule is going to get hard down the stretch for a lot of these squads. But right now, favorable position for Ohio State. They're looking solid. Next up, I don't think I did Arkansas. We'll go back and do that. Next up, we got Penn State. They were on a bye week four, take care of business week five against Maryland, take care of 56-10. A bye week this week, and now they are set to take on Kansas. This is going to be a interesting game. I think Penn State at home will be solid that this week against Kansas, but right now they're looking solid, stacking up some wins. Drew Aller has been very solid. Singleton's been solid on the ground. This is about where we expected Penn State so far this season. Like I said before, after that Kansas game, they got a couple easy CPUs. Then they take on the gauntlet of the Big Ten. So that's Ohio State, Michigan, Nebraska, Wisconsin, all these teams that have been solid so far. They face at the end of the season, but this Kansas will be a good test for them going into that game. Next up on the list, we have Texas. They are yet to play their game against Florida tonight, but that's not a game that they want to lose. So they want to make sure they go ahead and play that game so they don't leave it up to a fair simulation. But following that, they had back-to-back buys for weeks 4 and 5, and then they have two straight SEC games, SEC user games after Florida. They face Arizona State at home and at Kentucky. But this Texas team, they've claimed their shot at the national championship, so they look to fulfill those expectations. But they don't want to drop one here against Florida tonight. That will be interesting. That's a 2 versus 3 matchup. So one of those teams will drop significantly in the rankings, and we'll see what happens. Next up, I believe we have Vanderbilt. They have been looking very rough recently after a win first week of the season in the barn burner against Charlotte. They've lost four straight. Had a tough schedule going into Virginia Tech's not easy. South Carolina, of course, is not easy. Then you have to face Ohio State at home, also not easy. And they drop another one here this week, last week to Arkansas, losing 42-31. And now this week they have to go at Alabama, who's been struggling, and then they play at Georgia. So not a very gauntlet here for Vanderbilt. I wish I could say things get easier from there. But after Georgia, they play Florida by Texas A&M, and then two user games in a row. So this Vanderbilt team, unfortunately for Diego Pavi's last year, is not looking too solid. So hearts out to the Commodores. They got a bad luck of the draw, but they still have some hope. If they can start, turning the tides, there's a path to a bowl game here, but it is just increasingly unlikely. Um, After that, I think I forgot to go over Arkansas, and I don't remember going over Ohio. After week four was a bye for Arkansas. They faced Vandy. They won 42-31. They had a bye this week. They take on a tough opponent in South Carolina next week. The South Carolina team has dropped two straight games. That game, and then they follow that week by going on the road to Georgia. So this Arkansas team is undefeated. They're 4-0. They are looking solid as a bid for an SEC, but they have to go against the gauntlet of the SEC still. They haven't faced a single SEC user opponent yet. That won't change after week 7, but week 8 is their first SEC game, and then they take on, I think, the 3 remaining teams after that. Actually, excuse me, they beat Vanderbilt, who is a user game, but the gauntlet still remains for them. They still have to face another CPU game in Florida that's a tough team. So it's not going to be easy here for Arkansas. But they're off to a solid start. And then last but not least, we have the Ohio Bobcats. I can't remember if I went over them or not, but I'm just going to go over them anyways. Not a great start for some of these group of 6 teams. They do have a win against Western Michigan. They drop a heartbreaker to Charlotte, and then they get blown out by Tulane, 34-3. But next week they have another opportunity to beat an American Conference CPU, user in Liberty. So we'll kind of see what happens there. And then their schedule gets extremely light after that. They just have to play a Wake Forest team that's not great. So um, after Liberty, they only have one more user game against the struggling ECU, and they'll close out their season. So still a bid for Ohio. They have to start winning some American Conference games right now to have a chance of the American Conference championship. But solid start for them. If I take a look at recruiting here, not too much has changed. It's only week 6 right now, but our top classes, Wisconsin has signed 5 4 stars, so solid commits from them. They got some help on the offensive line. Georgia's also got some help on the line, as well as they got a 4 star running back. And those are two user teams that are pretty much in it, and a lot of the other teams are not doing great on the recruiting trail so far. I'm surprised that there's already been about 10 4 stars commit already, but Arkansas is at 32, and then the rest of the teams are below the top 50 here. So, everyone's kind of looking to get some recruits. If I'm looking at stats here, I'm sure that you'll find a lot of those stats from Liberty versus Texas, where the game score was total of 150. But some leaders as far as QB goes and rushing goes. It takes forever to do. So yards wise, Ohio State's Julian Sands through week 6 is when is, English is your yards leader through week 6. Sam Levitt's a close second with 1,975 yards, and after that, a user team is not Bryce Underwood, 1,600 yards, and that's about it for passing. But those two are night and day above the rest. And it doesn't look like we have any leaders as far as rushing goes for any of the teams. Nick Singleton is 520 yards in rushing, so that's pretty good. And then I don't see anybody else. I'm sure there's a receiver here that's going crazy up. Jordan Tyson already has 700 yards. Tyson Mobley is also 653 yards for Liberty, so a couple solid stats there. But we got some critical games week 7. I believe that's when also your college football playoff initial bracket comes out. Quite sure that we might not get a American Conference team as the 12th spot, but Liberty has a chance. But the Big Ten teams, SEC teams, are still fighting for their shot at the playoff, and we'll see what happens. But great job playing your games this week. We have a couple more to get done by the 6 o'clock window. But yeah, go ahead, play those games. We'll be advancing around 8 o'clock. I'll see you next week.